2,199. That's the total accumulated orders for the Boeing 787 family through 2025. More than 1,200 aircraft already delivered, nearly 1,000 still in backlog. One of the most successful programs in the history of modern commercial aviation. Now look at these numbers carefully. The 787-9, more than 1,150 orders, 787-10, around 320 orders, and the 787-8, approximately 480 total orders, and virtually no new contracts since 2020. While the two larger variants continue selling hundreds of units, particularly to Asian airlines, the aircraft that started the entire revolution has simply stopped. Not slowed down, not decelerated, stopped. And that creates one of the most curious situations in modern aviation. How can a program be an enormous success while the model that launched it quietly disappears from the market? Aviate has reached 20,000 subscribers passionate about aviation. Our sincere thanks for your support. And if you're new here, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. To understand where the 787-8 stands today, you need to understand what it was created to do, and that takes us back to 2004. The context was this. Airbus had just announced the A380, that two-deck colossus capable of carrying more than 500 passengers. The dominant logic of the time said the future of aviation was moving crowds between major hubs. The bigger the plane, the better. Boeing looked at that landscape and made a decision that at the time many people considered risky. They went in the opposite direction. Instead of building a bigger airplane, Boeing wanted to build a smaller one, but far more technologically advanced and far more efficient. The premise was simple in theory: connect mid-sized cities directly to each other without having to pass through a crowded hub in a way that was financially viable for airlines. That airplane would be the 787-8, and it had just two objectives. The first was to replace the Boeing 767-300ER, an aircraft that had been enormously important to the market, with nearly 600 units of its most popular variants sold throughout its production run. It was beloved by airlines, but it was aging. The 787-8 would be the natural heir, with similar capacity, but a massive technological leap. The second objective was far more ambitious, to open an entirely new market, the so-called long-thin routes, long-haul routes with moderate demand that until then simply weren't financially viable with conventional widebodies. And to do that, Boeing packed the 787-8 with an unprecedented combination of technology for commercial aviation. The aircraft was designed completely from scratch, using composite materials, essentially carbon fiber reinforced polymer, instead of traditional aluminum. New engines like the Trent 1000 from Rolls-Royce and the GE-NX from GE. There are other important features that have been covered extensively elsewhere: larger windows, controlled humidity, higher cabin pressure, and more. The result was operational efficiency roughly 30% greater than the aircraft of that era, and a maximum range of approximately 7,300 nautical miles. It was extraordinary. No other widebody of similar capacity came close to that combination of efficiency and range. When the 787-8 entered service in 2011 with ANA, All Nippon Airways of Japan, it seemed Boeing had hit the mark perfectly. Orders came in rapidly. Before long, the program had more than 400 units sold. It looked like the beginning of a long, sustained success story. Except something happened that no one could have predicted. The 787 program through 2025 has accumulated 2,199 firm orders. Of those, 1,206 aircraft have already been delivered to airlines around the world. The remaining backlog, aircraft ordered but not yet delivered, totals 993 units. For context on the scale of that, if Boeing maintains a delivery rate of approximately 5 aircraft per month, close to the current pace, that backlog represents more than 16 years of continuous production. The Dreamliner is far, very far from over. Now here's the part that changes everything. When you break those numbers down by variant, the story tells a completely different message. The 787-9, the intermediate version, slightly larger than the 8, has 1,557 total orders, more than 680 already delivered, and a backlog of 695 aircraft. On its own, the 787-9 represents more than 70% of everything still left to be built in the entire program. The 787-10, the larger version, built for high-density routes, has 433 total orders and a backlog of 270 units. And the 787-8, the original, the pioneer, the airplane that started it all? 427 total orders, 399 already delivered. Backlog? Just 28 units. Now, put that into perspective another way. At the current production rate, the entire 787-8 backlog would be consumed in less than 6 months. Meanwhile, the 787-9 has enough orders to sustain the production line for more than 11 years. The difference is staggering. And the most revealing detail of all, since 2020, Boeing has added only 2 units to the 787-8 backlog. 2 airplanes in 5 years. In that same period, more than 430 units across the 9 and 10 variants were ordered. That means something very specific. There was no drop in demand for the Dreamliner. There was specific rejection of the model that created the Dreamliner. And now the question that really matters: why? The answer isn't simple. There's no single villain in this story. What happened to the 787-8 was the result of 3 simultaneous forces that developed in parallel and that together created a situation it had no way out of. The first was solving the problem it was built to solve. Remember that the goal was to replace the 767-300ER? Well, it did exactly that, and it did it well. ANA, Japan Airlines, American Airlines, the world's largest 767 operators, bought the 787-8 and made the transition. The global pool of 767s waiting for replacement was progressively consumed over the past decade. And then, that market simply dried up.
The 2 major holdouts still operating the 767 at scale are United and Delta, with roughly 63 combined aircraft between them. Even if both decided to replace their entire fleets with the 787-8 tomorrow, the impact on the backlog would be modest. There is no second generation of 767s waiting to be replaced. It's almost an irony. The airplane fulfilled its mission so well that it eliminated the very reason for that demand to exist. The second reason is the middle sibling that grew up and took the space. When the 9 version came to market, it quietly shifted the balance of the entire Dreamliner family, and airlines noticed something that no Boeing sales brochure could counter. The 787-9 carries more passengers, it has superior range, it delivers better cost per seat, it offers greater flexibility to configure a cabin with more premium space without sacrificing economy class. Boeing even designed the 9 as the focal point of the family, with the program's proportions and aerodynamics optimized specifically around that version. It even has advanced aerodynamic features the 8 doesn't have. The practical result was a question that began circulating through fleet planning departments at airlines around the world. Why buy the smaller one when the medium does everything better? The market looked, analyzed, and decided quickly. The 8 lost the space it had occupied within its own family. But there was still a third force at work, and this one may be the most fascinating of all. When the 787-8 was designed in the early 2000s, there was an almost universal truth in aviation. Long-haul routes required widebodies. A narrow-body aircraft, however efficient, simply didn't have the range to cross oceans competitively. That changed. The Airbus A321neo family, especially the A321XLR, which can fly up to 4,700 nautical miles with a full passenger load, redefined what a narrowbody is capable of. That's approximately 11 hours of flight in a single-aisle aircraft. What was unthinkable 15 years ago is now an operational reality.
Now, compare the two options for an airline that wants to operate a secondary transatlantic route, say a mid-sized European city to a mid-sized American city with moderate demand. The 787-8 has an operating empty weight of around 120 tons. The A321neo weighs less than 50 tons. The Neo carries roughly 80% of the 787-8's passenger capacity, but burns significantly less fuel per seat, precisely because it's a simple fuselage design without the structural complexity of a widebody. And it costs significantly less to buy. For a route with moderate demand, exactly the long, thin routes the 787-8 was designed to dominate, the financial calculation now frequently favors the narrowbody. Less risk per flight, more frequency possible, lower operating cost. The niche the 787-8 was designed to occupy began to disappear. Then, the market created two well-defined zones of preference. For long-haul routes with moderate demand, the so-called long-thin routes, the market migrated to long-range narrowbodies. For high-demand intercontinental routes, the market went to the 787-9 and 787-10.
It's like trying to sell a product that's too expensive for the entry-level segment and too small for the premium segment. In both cases, the customer chooses something else. Boeing continues to ramp up production across the 787 program. The factory in North Charleston, South Carolina, is operating at the limit, with plans to reach 10 deliveries per month in the coming years. The program is healthy, active, and has a long queue. But recent deliveries show an overwhelming predominance of the 787-9 and 787-10. The program thrives. The original variant fades commercially, in silence, without drama, without headlines, just without new orders. Is there any chance of reversal? Any plan from Boeing to reposition the 787-8? Honestly, it doesn't look like it. Boeing has an enormous list of priorities: certification of the 737 MAX 7, MAX 10, development of the 777X. When and if the company has bandwidth for long-term projects, the bet is that the focus will go to what's called the new mid-market aircraft, a next-generation airplane meant to fill the space between the 737 MAX and the 787, which in practice would replace not only the MAX 8 and MAX 10, but the 787-8 itself. If that happens, investing in a new version of the smallest Dreamliner will make even less sense. So what does the story of the 787-8 really teach us? The airplane that launched the Dreamliner revolution became, with perfect irony, the first casualty of the revolution it created. But there's one final angle worth considering. Unlike products that disappear because they failed, the 787-8 will retire commercially, having done something rare in aviation. It permanently changed how airlines think about routes, efficiency, and risk. That's no small thing. In fact, it's exactly the kind of legacy most aircraft never leave. Tell me in the comments, do you think there's still a niche where the 787-8 can hold its ground? Cargo operators? Smaller airlines in emerging markets? I'd love to read what you think. If this video made you see aviation from a different angle, leave a like. It makes an enormous difference to the channel. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next video.